I'm Bobbi Kurshan. I'm at the Graduate School of the University of Pennsylvania, and I head up academic innovation and senior fellow in education. And our office has been looking at new innovations across the board. We run the largest business plan competition in education technology around the world. We give away $150,000 in prize money. Our competition finalists will be announced on Monday. And we have our meeting and competition on May 13th and 14th here at Penn. If anybody's interested in attending, it's a great meeting. We've been doing we just announced our new Masters in Education Entrepreneurship, the first one in education globally. So we're very excited about that. Of course, today in the email, I just saw that the University of North Carolina announced one also. So we're a little bit ahead of the game. So we are very excited, and I'm very excited about this panel and conference. I've been looking at MOOCs for a long time in my own doctoral work and my own research over many years of being in this space. And I come to this from looking at this as an innovation ecosystem that brings together researchers, entrepreneurs, investors, and practitioners. So the idea of blended learning in terms of its impact on MOOCs is really exciting. So we're going to have a little bit of presentation from each of our panel members. We're going to then have some questions that I prepared, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So instead of me reading everybody's long bio, I'm going to have them spend the first 30 seconds of starting to kind of give their bio. Do you want to start, Lee?
I'm an executive director of an NGO in Costa Rica. It's called the Mardengo Foundation. And I started with a presentation. We work in partnership with the Ministry of Education. We are in charge of designing and implementing all the ICT for education program in Costa Rica. So it's a large program with about 70% of our students in the program.
You want to start with your presentation, but Leda forgot to mention Costa Rica has always been at the forefront of technology and education. They were one of the first countries into which Seymour Papert went when he took Logo, and so they're way ahead of this, and they've been looking at this for a long time.
Yeah, 25 years.
And they have an amazingly innovative Minister of Education, whom I had the pleasure of meeting twice now in the Education World Forum.
It's about to step down.
He is been there a long time.
8 years.
Yeah. So go ahead and give your presentation.
All right. So, I need to. You might want to bring it over. Now. Is that on? It is on. Okay. There we go. Can we adjust the brightness on here?
Well, we're going to find out.
Oh, it's coming in.
Oh, it's just kind of warming up.
Yep. Okay. So I want to present very briefly what we're trying to do in professional development for teachers in our program, and maybe start telling you what we do and why are we using e-learning. And as I said, we have 27 years of working in partnership with the Ministry of Education. It's a nice private and public relationship. We get public funding to do what we do in the schools. And we run the National ICT for Education program with over 500,000 students and teachers. And we do the whole package. You know, we take care of the technology, we do the support to the technology, we train the teachers, we prepare materials for the classroom, and so on. We are in a country. The clear green areas are parks, so we're not there because we're not allowed to put any school in the park. But overall, we are in the whole country. That means cities, towns, and very, very hard to reach communities as well. And as I have already been mentioned, we had the honor to design a program about 27 years ago with Papert. And ICTs are for us, as he proposed, a resource. Really a resource or a tool to think, to create, and to interact. We work from K to 12, all over cycle, and even youth and adults. And we have a very, very strong emphasis as inherited by Popper of introducing computer programming from elementary school on. We do robotics, we do science, we do other things as well. As the program is growing, we start facing the need to start training large groups of teachers. Teachers that are no longer in a computer lab where we used to work for many years. Now they are facing the classroom and the regular subjects. And they need training in how to incorporate ICTs into the regular classroom. So the question was how to reach them effectively. What do they need to learn? Do they need to learn the same thing? Obviously no. And then we start asking, well, can we also help other Spanish-speaking teachers? At this point, we have started a basic program that we're conducting, in which unexperienced teachers that have not introduced technology into the classroom, get this process, initial training, in where face-to-face becomes very important. We need to get them explore the technology to overcome resistance and fears, and learn about our pedagogical proposal to really incorporate ICTs into the classroom. And then we do a follow-up and support to those teachers in which we have advisor, monitor, and coach them both online and with selective visits. And those selective visits are people that need special push, they're having trouble, so we can focus on them and do a more massive approach to the ones that are doing okay. And we have pretty much, and then we have the continuous training for all of them, both combining face-to-face and online support. And then for the experienced teachers, we concentrate on the follow-up and support, and there we do the same thing. We have selected visits to those that need special coaching and help, and the rest is doing online, and we could do continuous training for them online. We start defining an ideal teacher profile to kind of decide what they need to learn, and we did this collectively with a large group of teachers and experienced people, and said, well, what is an ideal teacher in Costa Rica? And we decided that an ideal teacher is an educator, a researcher, a professional, and a citizen. And from there, we start building our profile. And we did also, with the same exercise, decide, well, what kind of characteristics our courses should have. And this somehow summarizes what we end up thinking that should be there. And we also have a very nice virtual campus, which is a very important part of what we do. And teachers encounter themselves in there with other teachers and with the experts in different areas, and they do collaborative practice and peer-to-peer learning and assessment, and we are trying to make this very user-friendly campus, because we have found that that's the main obstacle. If they start having to learn how to use it, and they need to start remembering passwords, and all of those little things become barriers for them to start using this. So we'll be officially launching this new platform in which we're putting all these ideas next month, and I just wanted to give you a very brief summary, and this is just how it will look. All right, so at the end, Be-Learning is allowing us to reach large groups, and yet to have the face-to-face contact for those specific groups or people, individuals, that need a more closer support.
Thank you. Okay. Jennifer and Lori?
I'm Lori Breslow. I'm from Boston, a teaching and learning laboratory, but she's taught me everything that I know about working with large data sets. So just want to acknowledge that.
Great. Well, give a slight introduction of what the Teaching and Learning Laboratory is and yourself, and then we'll do your
Sure. My name is Jennifer DeBoer. I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher, postdoctoral associate for education research at the Teaching and Learning Laboratory. As Lori said, we're at MIT, and We work with the Department of the Dean for Undergraduate Education, but also have been fortunate to have access to some of the information from the early MIT MOOCs, which is what I'm going to talk about today. This is someone else's computer. Oh, great, okay. Great. So the Teaching and Learning Lab, we've been working with undergraduate education at MIT for a long time, but we were fortunate to get some of the information from an early MIT, which I'll be talking about today. Our spin on the kind of blended learning question is a little bit different. We're looking at behaviors and activities in this online space, but we're also looking at the importance of students' background, their previous experiences offline, and what that means for the virtual context. So I'll give a bit of background into the platform and the specific class that we looked into. And we'll look at some of the differences in aggregate performance, as well as some further detail into the behaviors and outcomes, specifically for students who are located in low, lower, middle, and middle income contexts, to try and get some data to inform the question of who are these students, where are they coming from, which I think is a question that's permeating a lot of the discussions at this conference. In order to understand what this virtual classroom space can do and what it is, we need to understand what it means in the real world context. So the questions driving our analyses that I'll talk about here are, first and foremost, who are the MOOC students? Where are they coming from? And specifically in low and middle income countries, what is their background and prior experiences? What can we observe about their behaviors, how they use the site, and how they do in the class? And then can we have some insight into the question of whether MOOCs are serving as a vehicle for increased access to educational opportunities? Some background on the class that we have been digging into for essentially the past 2 years. It was a Circuits and Electronics class, the first MOOC that was offered on the MIT platform. It ran from March to June of 2012. I'll refer to it by its course number, colloquially 602X. So we have a lot of rich, complicated data from this first class, but it is indeed just one class example that I hope will inform some of the questions that we can and should ask of MOOCs, as well as provide some insight into some of the details from a MOOC class. So first, this is what one of the main pages in 602X would look like. The course site consisted of Khan Academy-like lecture videos. There were questions that were interspersed between video segments, tutorials, a discussion forum, and a number of assessments, so problem sets, labs, midterm, and final. The data that we had to deal with was, as I said, pretty complex. Over 230 million different clicks. So this is what
Yeah,
sorry about the conversion here is not exactly what we have in here. So I'll read through this. The Clickstream Data consists of 230 million is the number that's blacked out there. 230 million interactions, 230 million different clicks to try and make sense of. And each of these clicks had the IP address, so we could locate students, most of the students in a geographical context, what they're doing with the different course components. We also have the threads from the discussion forum, which consisted of 12,696 threads for a total of actually 96,696 individual posts. And then we also had an end-of-course survey, which was completed by a subset of students. About 7,100 students completed the exit survey at the end of the class. So where are these students coming from? If we assign each student to the city from which they most frequently log onto the site, we see that we have students from nearly every country in the world. The colors, again, are a little bit off here, but You can see that there's a spread of students everywhere. Some of the larger dots, obviously, in Europe, in the northeast of the US. But even being able to locate students in these contexts was complicated by the fact that we have students logging on from multiple locations. So as we tried to make sense of students sitting in geographical context, it's important to note that we have students who are logging on from multiple countries even. So these lines represent a connection between students who have logged on from multiple countries. About 20% of the students whom we could locate logged on from multiple countries. So this is challenging for two reasons. One, if we're trying to do analyses based on where these students are coming from geographically, politically, and culturally, it gets complicated. But two, we can also start to see that this is a particular population of students. It's a pretty mobile population, which is starting to get at our question of, are we reaching the students who MOOC providers are saying that they're trying to reach. So let's dig a little bit further into the individual students' backgrounds that we can observe for this particular course, and ask questions that we know are important for educational experiences and opportunities, like have they had access to formal education or to this particular course material before? What are their individual goals in coming to this class? So I picked out 4 lower middle, middle and lower income OECD countries here as examples, just to start to highlight some of the differences that we see in the profiles of students responding to our survey who are coming from those countries versus the overall profile of the MOOC students in this class.
I'm sorry, is this the post or pre-survey?
This is the post. So I'll note that for this class, this was the first MIT class that was done, we only have a post survey, but because of some of the insights that we were able to show from this post survey, there are now pre-surveys that are given on the platform. Most students are there for the knowledge and skills they'll gain and the personal challenge. Interestingly, this is even more the case for students in India and Brazil, signing up for the knowledge and skills they'll gain. In Poland, way more than the average students are signing up for the personal challenge. In Colombia, more than the average students are signing up for the entertainment value and the employment and job opportunities offered by this course. If we try to understand the previous educational attainment of the students who are in this class, we can see that a large number of them, perhaps even more than average, have had some secondary or high school. The question was not asked whether they're in school right now. So these may be students who are in college right now from some of the other work that's been done on other courses. This may seem to be the case. But in terms of a student's social and cultural capital that would relate to educational opportunities, we know an even more important question may be, what was your parents' educational attainment? And so that question was asked as well. And we see that more than the overall profile, which is the furthest kind of light blue all the way on the right of these clusters. In India and Brazil, the students report that their parents' highest degree, that their parents have a bachelor's degree. In Colombia and Poland, more of the students report that their parents have a master's or professional degree. And notably, more of the students in Poland, their parents have PhDs. And interestingly, for students reporting that their parents are engineers, many more in Poland are reporting that their parents are engineers. So we start to see that some of the students coming from countries that in the conversation are where MOOCs are trying to reach to may not be the average profile of a student that is in the discussion. So a little bit more insight into what resources students are actually using when they go on the site and whether they're successful. And these are just a couple of interesting anomalies in the study that we were doing. In Venezuela, there's a high proportion of students who are answering questions on the discussion forum. Now, we noted that of the lower and middle income countries, there's a large representation of Spanish-speaking countries that are very active on the discussion forum. In fact, they're posting in Spanish many times. They're creating conversations in Spanish and answering each other's questions in Spanish. Overall, most students didn't spend a whole lot of time on the e-textbook. However, in Nigeria, students spent nearly 17% of the time on the platform on the e-text, which was just PDFs of the course textbook that were put online. In anecdotal conversations with engineering students in Nigeria, who I know have done some of these classes, they said that the connectivity issue is certainly problematic for us, and we've kind of found a way around that with the e-textbook. So this may be what we're seeing here. I'm going to go through this a little bit more quickly. I'm happy to spend more time later during the questions on the aggregate performance. But we were interested in kind of doing larger quantitative analysis where students are nested in countries. And so we looked at a multi-level model that had both individual factors, the behaviors that they displayed and how they use the site, as well as some of the national level factors that we know might be important, such as the predominant language, internet penetration, and income level. We found that there were differences in both the average and the distribution of performance. So I'll just point out here that we see for all of the students who participated in the course from the US, Brazil, India, and Greece, we see a high proportion of low-performing students in the US. So the highest peak of any of those is students in the US. There are a lot of students who are using the site, but not scoring all that many points on the assessments. Greece, on the other hand, is a much flatter profile, so you have a higher proportion of students who are getting up in the 60s and above, which would earn them a certificate. So we did find that there were indeed some individual and country level factors that were important for students' achievement. For MOOC providers, for researchers, for instructors, they need to understand both where these students are coming from, as well as what they're individually doing. The conversation around who these MOOCs are reaching is obviously an important question, and from the data that we see here, it looks like access is still an important issue. So I'm happy to answer any questions during the ensuing discussion, or you can check out our website for some of our publications. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions around it. So Chrystina, want to tell us what you're doing in Rwanda?
Sure.
Kigali?
My name is Chrystina Russell. I live in Kigali, Rwanda right now. I just moved there in August. I left 10 years of working with the New York City Department of Education, where I was trying to use technology to help students who were really struggling. I have a background in bilingual special education. So I am currently involved in what I think is one of the coolest projects in Rwanda, but I just heard about a new one, which is called Kepler. And I'm going to go over the program and just explain what we're doing. I'm the chief academic officer there right now, but as we're in startup mode, all of us are a little bit of everything. So in case you aren't aware, this week is actually April 7th was the 20th anniversary of the genocide. And so I'm proud to be here on behalf of our students talking about all the great work that they're doing. Most of them were between right about being born up to about 5 years old. In Rwanda, you'll see that students are a little bit older at the university age right now because schools were shut down for roughly 4 years or so as the country was rebuilding. So this is our actual campus. We started in September, and we're combining online academic content with in-person teaching. So students will be with us for quite a long time, about 9 in the morning until 5 at night, where we take information that they've learned the night before using the flipped model, so they'll watch MOOCs at home as well as other software online learning supports, and then we try to make the learning real for them in the classroom by designing projects, doing small discussion groups, supporting with language as needed. So a lot of our techniques that we use in the classroom are actually based on some K through 12 teaching techniques that have been proven to really move students forward. All of our students are technically English language learners because Rwanda switched to English as the official language in 2008. So rather than having tenured faculty, which just is not affordable for us to get our university at an affordable price for our students are Rwanda does poverty categories, and our students are coming from the most poor group in the country, but they are very high achieving. So we have what we call learning experts or course facilitators. So the idea is that we import in the content from the MOOCs, and then our teachers will help the students learn through proven teaching techniques. We have 3 expat teachers and 5 Rwandese teachers at this point. This is one of our most enthusiastic teachers right there, Omar. Super talented, has never taught before, but our goal is to not hire any more expat teachers and really develop our teachers from within the country, and hopefully also contribute to the economy through our project. So we focus on the actual content, which comes from the MOOCs, and we also really try to push critical thinking, professional skills, technical skills, and character. So I'll maybe answer questions about the specifics of those later if people are interested. We also try to take a really pragmatic approach. So sometimes this is hard for me. I tend to like learning for the sake of learning. But we really need to make sure that we're teaching students things that are going to get them jobs. And so we really try to study where the jobs will be available and tailor our curriculum towards that. And we also have internships and employer contributions to the curriculum development. So we really want to hear from people, what do employers need, rather than design it from ourselves, which again is sometimes a challenge for me. So this is just a visual that sort of outlines the 3 things that we're doing using online content, the in-person learning, and workplace training. So students are actually earning a degree here from the United States through College for America, and College for America is a great partner for us because it's a competency-based degree. So this means that time and credits don't matter as much, although we do have our own time requirements in Kigali. Students will submit projects to College for America, and they either are competent or proficient in the competencies or not. If they're not, they get feedback from the assessor here in the United States, and they need to redo their project until it meets that standard. This is where some of our English language really comes in as a challenge, so we're finding that we can coach the students to the level of thinking they need to be at, but expressing that in a second language can often be difficult. So in terms of our goals and what we're trying to do with this model is that we want to reduce the cost of education. So we would like to ideally get down to $1,000 per student. We don't know if we'll do that, but we're certainly pushing hard towards that because it needs to be around that level to be affordable for the students. We want to have quality and relevance. So again, we want our students to come out with the types of skills that employers want. And also, a lot of students tell us, and I've seen myself in visiting some of the universities, that sometimes professors don't show up or the technology doesn't work, that there may not be adequate textbooks, and so we really want to raise the level of quality of instruction. And then we want to create a program that has a good reputation. So I'm going to go quickly through these slides because I think a lot of the presentations have talked about the problems. But the reason that Kepler came about is that there are 3 million youth in Africa, and it's a rapidly developing place, and we're either going to have students there that are prepared for this development or not. But if the status quo stays the same, then we will just have a generation of young people without skills and without jobs, which is not a good thing. So again, everybody's really young in Africa. I think we've heard that. These are also just some percentages of individuals with degrees. Our area is particularly troublesome at 7%. So less than 5% of young people in Africa are currently attending university. Some can't find seats, others can't afford them. There's also not a student loan mechanism right now, at least in Rwanda and most parts of Africa, or if there is, the interest rate would be about 30%, which is not affordable for our students. So we are working with Kiva as well as some other hedge funders in New York to try to come up with a student loan mechanism that's affordable, but also safe enough for people to actually offer the loans. These are numbers on the global college-age population, a lot in Africa. And then this is what both employers and people who are studying the topic are telling us, that graduates are not ready for the workplace, and many employers that I talk to feel that they have to design really their own sort of 101 education program once they hire somebody. So last year when we opened, we had 3,000 applications for 50 seats. We had about the same this year for 100 seats. We're trying to expand. I think I love this job, and it's been wonderful working with the students, but the admissions process felt particularly heartbreaking to me, because you go around and the students are so eager, and they come and take the admissions exam in a suit and tie, and you know, to tell the students no, really that experience helped me with sort of this sense of urgency and expanding, and also helps me from the academic perspective, because we want it to be high quality. And sometimes that can mean that things need to be small, but we know we need to push it out and offer to as many students as we can. So these are just some of our students along with their family members. So just wanted to share a couple of personal anecdotes about them. Some of the students have told us that one thing they have to do with us is meet one-on-one and set their own goals and go through a coaching session. Because our students, similar to students around the world, are very used to teachers telling them what and how they have to do things, when does it due, and so we want to get them thinking on their own. And that actually proved to be much more difficult than we thought it would be for university-age students. And as we started digging into that problem, it was we learned from a lot of the students that they weren't comfortable or sort of stopped setting goals, not because they didn't want to achieve them, but because things would just get in the way, extreme poverty or not having shoes for school. And so they learn, many of our students, to sort of, as they say, be grateful for the day, or sort of take this different philosophy of life. So having students who perhaps never imagined that they would be in university education come back and be able to start to set goals and track their own progress has been a really exciting project. Watching the students work with the technology is also one of the most fun parts for me. So many of them had never turned on a computer. Some had only used a computer mostly just for Facebook. And so on that first day when we gave them their computers and watching them open the box was really fun. Then the hard work set in, because this idea that young people just automatically use technology is not true. I think younger generations are more comfortable just experimenting and maybe not having a manual. But it definitely takes some very specific teaching of skills for students who've not yet used computers. And it's been fun to watch them grow in that way, and they're pretty proud of themselves. So they're just some of our students. So how are we doing so far? We have an independent research company coming in to measure how our students do compared to students attending traditional universities in Rwanda. And we just got back some of the preliminary data on the midline assessment, which shows us that students are doing much better than traditional students in terms of technical skills. They're doing better, but I want to see them doing even more better in terms of critical thinking, which we measured with the CLA Plus exam. And they're also outperforming significantly in terms of just general skills, so an SAT type test. So far so good. We're researching this though not only to improve what we're doing, but also we take the indirect impact really seriously. All of our curriculum is open source, so we share it with anybody. Anything we learn, we want to share. The mistakes we make, we want to share, and we hope that people will do similar type models, or even just take little bits and pieces of what we're doing, make it better, apply it to their context. So things that we're really excited about at this point are just the motivation of the students, their intelligence, how excited they are to be there. The really rough stuff is also things that we've been talking about repeatedly, and that's first internet access. So access is extremely slow and extremely frustrating. There is a project that's a collaboration between the Rwandese and Korean government to try to get 4G to Kigali. I hope it happens, but in the meantime, you know, it didn't surprise me to hear about in Nigeria that students spend more time on the textbook. We have to find, even though we're using these online models, ways to take as much content offline as we can because it's just not reliable. English is a challenge. Again, this was sort of an overnight change in 2008 that Rwanda just changed to English as the official language. So the Rwandan government has a way of just making decisions and implementing them, and generally has been pretty successful over the last 20 years. Unfortunately, the human brain can't just change with a mandate, and so the students struggle with English, maybe not conversationally, but when we talk about a MOOC from MIT, that is a high level of English, and so it requires a lot of scaffolding and support from us, as well as changing both between English and Kinyarwanda to make sure that students can make meaning of the content. And the other is similar to what Susan talked about yesterday in her presentation about MOOCs in South Africa, which is just that students are not necessarily prepared for the level of rigor that we are expecting. One of the things that we got from our midline research is that our students are stressed out. They are really, really stressed out. We're pushing them hard. So things like a bridge program, as she talked about, you know, maybe having students coming in and not needing to use a computer all at once, watch a MOOC at home, learn how to type, brush up on basic skills, and work in a group, which for many of them was the first time, use all the critical thinking skills. It's a lot at once, and so we need to figure out a better way to break that down for the students. University in a box or university in a backpack is just a reference to what I said before. We would love for people to be able to take either pieces or the whole model of what we're doing. We share with everybody. It's completely free. We want to really increase access, and so we hope to have a quote-unquote university in a box where people can help to reach maybe some of the students that aren't accessing the MIT MOOCs. So if you have any questions, this is my email, as well as my colleague Alex, who's here, who does partnerships and funding, and also all of our social media, and that's it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deirdre Woods. We travel very far, right as far as me and my colleagues are here at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm Executive Director of Penn's Open Learning Initiative. So I wanted to just run you through a little bit about our Open Learning Initiative and our MOOC initiative here at Penn, and then I want to give you a case study of what we've done with calculus. I think it's really interesting. None of us have met before, but so many of the things, especially have said about learning and instruction, we have discovered in our calculus pilot, even though the pilot we've done here is in the US. So it's like we rehearsed it. So we've been in the MOOC business since June 2012, and we had some very specific reasons about why we wanted to do this. Driving innovation on campus is very important to us. Penn is a hollow, long-standing institution, and thoughts about technology-enhanced learning for older institutions are difficult. I mean, we pride ourselves in having this wonderful on-campus experience, and how does technology really work in there? Another thing universities do are create and disseminate knowledge, and what a great platform to use is a MOOC platform to create and disseminate knowledge that we have here on campus every single day. And another piece is to really place Penn, at least in the beginning of the conversation, about what technology-enhanced educations and MOOCs mean here on Penn campus, in the United States and abroad as well. And occasionally you'll see some quotes spattered through my presentation. People write to us all the time, and those of you who haven't been walking around campus, there's our iconic Ben on the bench, and he too there is taking a MOOC course. So, here's just a smattering of our courses. This slide's a little old. We have quite a few courses. I actually wanted to draw your attention to some of them that, we do have clearly a worldwide audience. I don't know if you got to see Kristen's presentation earlier talking about people taking MOOCs. But we also have some courses that sort of have a more worldwide appeal. Listening to world music, growing around the globe. A new course that's not listed here is Analyzing Global Trends for Society and Business, which will be running soon. We also had a course called Applying to U.S. Universities. that we just launched as part of our English language programs to talk to people about around the world about how to apply to university. So we do have some courses that are more specifically focused towards the world at large as opposed to US-centric. I also want to point out Designing Cities, which is taught from our graduate school of design. This has been a course that the faculty members have taught in real life here on campus, but most of their, and the capstone project for there was to do designs, urban planning and city designs, but the projects were mostly US-centric. But now that they have done this MOOC around the world, the amazing capstone projects and examples and this library now that we have that we can share with others around the world as people are talking about their designs in urban planning, city planning, it's just been, it's been an incredible experience. And most of these courses here, I can probably tell you a very similar story about the reach and impact that we had no idea we were able to be part of. So just a little bit more about us. Summer 2012, I showed up, I met our provost, he said we're launching some courses soon, could you please help? I was like, oh no. I've been on Penn campus for many years, but this is a new role for me. So we've had 5 courses. Penn has many schools. We have professional schools here at Penn, so we have 3 schools. We have about 200,000 enrollments, and you see here we have we've done over 30 unique courses on more than pretty much anybody out in MOOC land right now. We've offered 45 sessions or 46 sessions of our courses because we've done repeats, we've done multiple versions. A lot of representation across the breadth and depth of our tremendous faculty at Penn. And you see our enrollments are close, I don't know, we could be at 2 million enrollments at this point. And I think a more interesting thing, because I think one of the things people really talk about is completion rates, low completion rates, so on and so forth, for some of the challenges like Chrystina mentioned here. We have 100,000 completions in our courses. That means people like finished, 100,000 people finished our courses. Again, a small number, 5%, but that's even if you add it up in academic years, not that these are degree-bearing certificates, that's still a lot of years of certification and learning that have occurred in 18 months on MOOC. So again, we're early days, but there's an opportunity, I think, for great impact in MOOC land, assuming we solve some of the really serious issues that are, that are in front of us and in front of people all over the world. So that's us. I want to talk a little bit about our high school calculus pilot. So we have a fabulous faculty member. He's a university professor, and he has a dual appointment in engineering and in mathematics. And he doesn't like any math textbook. He hates every math textbook. He hates it. He thinks they're all terrible. They don't teach math well. They don't teach calculus well. So he designed a calculus MOOC. This is actually the BC calculus, so this is a higher level calculus in the calculus series, not the AB calculus. That would be the introductory calculus. He did it like this. It's in kind of comic novel format, which is a little disconcerting. Of course, the course is extremely hard. Like, I got past 3 slides, and I was like, it's a very difficult course. He actually thinks it's harder. It's a harder course. He was able to do stuff that was harder in his MOOC than he does on campus, which he loved. So we decided to ask some local and less local high schools if they wanted to give this a try, because one of the promises of MOOCs clearly is to figure out how we use this content in other formats than just delivering online. So we started with 9 high schools. What is very interesting, and again, this is just in the U.S., but what's very interesting is curriculum in public schools is pretty regimented, and it's very difficult for schools to figure out sort of how you can do different things in a regimented curriculum. There's an advanced placement test that is very important here for teachers to have students take and succeed, and then we literally threw this at teachers. So we started with 9 high schools. We ended up with 5 that have really soldiered through this with us this year. We have about 60 students. Again, these are advanced students, especially for high school students, 16, 17, and 18 before they go to college. And so these are really pretty sophisticated and kind of outstanding students. We did hire a TA. He was actually he was a doctoral student in mathematics here who worked with us in our MOOC, and so we hired Alberto to support the faculty. We've been growing the faculty throughout the course. I have to say, I have not had a lot of exposure to high school teachers in a format except when my kids were in school. And these teachers are so passionate about their education, teaching students, teaching, in some cases, 2 curricula. I have a teacher who's teaching regular calculus, and then so she's teaching her AB calculus, and then she's teaching her BC calculus MOOC on top of this, and interweaving the material and catching kids up in a variety of ways. So it's been really, really great working with them. And again, they had to put extra time in because again, we just said, here, give this a try. So I think this is, so that's sort of what we've done this year. So some of the stuff we're doing and some of the stuff we've learned. So first of all, we're having a meeting here on campus, so we're having all the students come, as many of them can come, and their teachers to meet with Professor Grice and our team to sort of work through, to hear from the students about their experience and what we want to do. We're going to rerun the pilot. What we really found out, and this is so obvious, clearly, is we really need to provide some teaching materials, and perhaps some of these teachers give us some teaching materials to really be able to use more easily in high school curriculum. We are creating an AV version of calculus as we speak. We're hoping fall or next winter that will be done, so we will use that material as well. You know, very obvious, you know, and I think this is one of the challenges for MOOCs in general. It is difficult to innovate this narrow curriculum, and it's also difficult to take material that was used in such a purpose over here and try to kind of put it into something that kind of already exists. I mean, I think we've really learned that we need to think about that a little bit more and you know, think about when you create content, sort of how it's going to be used down the line. The calculus MOOC runs all the time. We actually had a child who was 9 years old the first time he took the MOOC, who did like 98% of the class. He was one of the people who had suggested that we talk to his brother's high school to actually do this. An interesting thing though, I was talking to one of our local Philadelphia teachers. We had terrible weather this year in mid-Atlantic and the Northeast here in the US. And she had said, you know, they were so behind in so many other classes, but these kids are totally up to speed in their calculus class because she just made them keep on working. Because she's like, they were sitting home in their computers anyway. So I think that was kind of an interesting piece, and I can tell you a little bit more about, let's see, I had notes I wanted to tell you about what was going on. I just think one of the things this also I think is another example of, and we've heard it here and I've heard it at other conferences, and I've said it many times, I mean, I think what MOOCs do is what's old is new again in some ways, because you still need to pair great teaching with great content. I think MOOCs have the opportunity to have up-to-date content, hopefully more cheaply, hopefully at some point more easily accessible. But you still need great instruction. Independent learning is very, very difficult at many levels. So I think this is just another example of what we heard over and over again. We're still in early days, so it's been really, really interesting, and I'm glad to address questions later. But here I am. You can write to me, our website, we're Twitter, on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and Open Learning. You can find us. So please stay in touch.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions that I'm going to ask the panel, and then please raise your hand and join in. All of you talked about the fact that you were using some kind of MOOC and MOOC content in a more traditional school, traditional class, traditional training, and what was happening in the traditional content and how you were using it. Could you talk about what kind of training and work you did to help take MOOC content and convert it into a blended learning approach? So, Deirdre mentioned some work in terms of providing learning materials for the teachers, but could you all comment on that? And in Gagali, you're using it as the core of to be able to meet your economic model, to be able to provide content. So talk a little bit about how you're doing that. Who wants to start?
Can I start? Sure. So I happen to be married to the guy who teaches freshman physics, electricity, and magnetism at MIT's required course, 800 students, and he also did the MOOC on electricity and magnetism, and has migrated everything for the residential course onto the edX platform. And we have a team of educationalists, computer scientists, and physicists who are working together. And the way we did it is when we were brushing our teeth in the morning, I said, honey, you've got to do this, and you have to have that part of it. And it's hard to convince those disciplinary experts, but I have a little bit of an in. So we're actually going to be combining data from 802X from the MOOC with the on-campus data, which we're collecting on a local server, and we hope to see some things to answer that question.
Great. Do you want to talk about your training program and you're moving to this virtual platform? How much of it is content that's all from the in-class, or how much of it is online that you found other places?
We really designed everything that we put in there. But maybe I'll mention two things. When we start making courses or asking experts to help us in making the courses, what we found is that people were just changing the format from a classroom to a screen, and really wasting the opportunities that the online technology is offering. So we start, we raised everything and said we don't have time or physical barriers. We don't have to do anything that is in sequence. We, start thinking all over about this. And that exercise, I think, is very, very important. Every time, with every course we start designing, just forget about, the sequence. We forget about the time and the structure and the space. And that gives you, a whole different view to everything.
You want to talk about how you picked the content you did for the course program?
Yeah, there's so much content out there that sometimes we just hit a deadline and it's like, all right, this is one we're going to try and we'll track it and we'll see how it goes. So for us, we realized just sending the students off to watch the MOOC was really not doing a lot for us, so we had to create a lot of scaffolds and sort of note-takings and times to pause and questions to consider, and also teaching the students how to ask questions about what they were struggling with. It's not a question asking culture to your professor in Rwanda, so not only are we trying to change that, but we're also trying to have them do it with something they're watching on their own. So a lot of modeling. All of our students, we provide housing for them, and so they can watch them together, and so we did have some teachers actually go into the home and watch it with them and sort of just model those metacognitive strategies of actually making it through and how you bring the questions that you have. During the day, we really, for example, we just did an economics class, I believe from the University of San Jose, and we had to, that one was okay to do mixed language groups because it's sort of a little bit more of a concrete type finding answers subject. The psychology course that we offered, however, from the University of Toronto, we really had to break down into different language groups. So we had an A, B, and C group, and one of them we actually had to run a lot of the instruction in Kinyarwanda because the vocabulary is just so intense. But all of their assessments and final presentations do have to be in English because they're getting a US-based degree. So for us, it's just a lot of experimentation. We're kind of just diving in, trying the content, and so we have these weekly meetings where we really talk about what are we doing, is it working? Analyze how they're doing on their assessments. So, but I think, yeah, really modeling the metacognitive strategies, and then, again, the face-to-face part is important, having them break down into different groups, creating both student leaders, teacher leaders, and yeah, making sure that we address the language component and try to not just stratify on that all the time, but we sometimes do just have to break them down to be able to make sure they're getting the basic content.
All of us are using a relatively, the Coursera, the edX, all of the platforms out there are relatively primitive. They're sort of in the nascent stage, and they're designed to deliver a talking head, and yet we're trying to provide, as you just described, a much more interactive experience that goes on. What are you doing to add to the features of it? What would be your one thing that you would like to have that any of the platforms don't have? And how do you teach people to put their content onto it? So they're not, professors and teachers are generally not instructional designers.
If I could sort of circuitously answer that,
Sure.
because I wouldn't say, okay, here's the one thing that'll solve it, or here's what edX or whoever should do. But from anecdotally observing the ways in which these materials were used in blended formats by the students in this particular class, two things are, I think, striking. One is thinking of blended materials not just as, okay, here's the classroom experience, the residential experience, and here's the online experience, but thinking about other online avenues that can be blended into the edX platform. So we saw a number of students who said, I'm going to create a Facebook group, or I'm going to create a wiki page that will kind of allow me to do group discussion or pull in the materials that I want to, but it'll feed into my edX experience. So there's a lot of other materials besides the MOOC platforms that are out there, Twitter, whatever, that can be woven into, blended with the virtual experience. Another thing that we saw, and I think a number of other MOOC classes have seen this, is that teachers are taking MOOCs sort of as a review or as a source of learning materials. So thinking about the blended experience from the MOOC perspective, and teachers as students who then can bring those experiences into their own classroom as another kind of non-traditional blended way of taking those materials, an avenue for the MOOC experience to feed into an in-person experience.
I think there's got to be a lot of work done with assessments to make them real. You know, for quantitative courses, there's a fair amount of decent assessment stuff out there, but we've done a fair amount of courses that are more essay-based, you know, where you have to actually write, which is kind of an important skill, critical thinking skill one needs in the world. And there's this peer assessment piece. It's not great. I think there's actually a great opportunity. I could tell you somebody that's a great business plan for somebody. So if someone could really figure out how you do good essay writing. I mean, the SAT just ditched it, so clearly they gave up on that. But you know, if there's a way to grade non-quantitative, create and grade non-quantitative assessments, I think that's a really important next step.
I'm going to open it up. Go ahead.
I just connect. From an educational research point of view, we've been pushing edX to do A/B testing. The platform right now can't do A/B testing, and we've been looking to do it.
Well, all of you have described amazing projects, and what's very interesting, when we use the word MOOC, we say massive online, but all of you are working in very small groups of using the model. So is massive not successful, not appropriate? Is it really a model that is more appropriate for the online open or free part of it versus the massive part? Because you all are having great results with your smaller numbers. You're 50 or 100 students, you're a small class of 800, whatever your class you're using. So is massive the wrong name for this?
My response to that would be, you know, no matter how big the platform or the class or whatever it is, as long as you can individualize it and understand where the students are coming from and have an experience that supports diverse students, then that's really the key. So whether it's a classroom of 50 students or 50,000, you still need to be able to tailor that experience, recognize that students come in with different prior knowledge, prior experiences, and so I think that's important regardless of the size.
Okay, we must have 100 questions out here because I have 100 more. So let me start. Let's start with Abdul. Yeah.
I start with your comment about massive.
Yeah.
I don't know what the motivation was to call it massive, because nobody really, in quantitative terms, has also not defined what massive is. I have seen the figures. I mean, you're talking about 50 students or even 100 students in Rwanda. There are open universities that have millions of students, so I don't know whether massive was the correct choice. That's for people who are running these programs for them to decide. But one needs to know what the motivation was. Was it to impress the media that we are now dealing with massive numbers? The second question that I wanted to ask was there was any course among the courses that you offer in Rwanda which required hands-on practical skills? And if so, how do you
like automotive or something like that?
Well, anything that would, I mean, for example.
Well, project-based, right?
Yeah, well,
robotics.
So robotics, for example.
yeah, I mean, if you're training somebody in nursing, how can you train a nurse without the person being given the opportunity to practice the art of nursing or the science of nursing, for that matter?
Yeah, so we would love to get into the healthcare degrees because there's jobs there, right? But we at this point could not afford to pay faculty that would have those skills and have the necessary requirements. So our degree right now is general and business based. That said, for us, the MOOCs are, just as you mentioned, a tool. They're not the end-all be-all. And so I think the goal of Kepler is to get very big and for this to just be small and to be able to get big. But no matter what, we're going to have teachers in the classroom that make that material real. So for example, as they're learning about businesses and business plans in class, we have them working in groups of 6, to one recent project that we had was ideas for Kepler, and it was creating a prototype for a business idea that would make Kepler better. And then they had to present that out to community experts, you know, do market research in their own local context. So that's culture, and making it relevant to students is a challenge as well. We had one project and one talking about camping. And so the idea of camping to run these students was just really silly. So not only are you taking on these tough concepts, but now you're going to explain why people would, when they have their own home, like go carry a tent outside. You know, some of it really can get lost. But so we're not at the technical healthcare level. I would love if we could be. I think that is one that would be challenging for us. I think as we think about what are our majors going to be and what can we offer, we need to keep it small and high quality, and then probably have to hire people on that can help us with that. But Omar, one of my favorite teachers, actually got a master's degree in the US in computer science, and so if we went the computer science route, then we would try to hire on people along his background if we could. But it's going to be a challenge as we grow. But there's nothing highly technical that we're doing like healthcare or robotics, or, you know, our staff are more sort of generalized, you know, best practices in teaching and learning, but they aren't highly specialized content knowledge teachers, and so that's something we have to balance out.
Yes.
Quick question for Jennifer. You said that you analyzed the low and middle income students that are looking for a course taker.
Could you speak up a little? I think.
Sorry,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what
The
percent
picture.
of the entire survey of course takers did they represent?
Well, so if we look at the exit survey, or if you look at the entire course registrants, or if you look at everyone who clicked on the site, it depends on which group you look at.
Pre and post, I guess.
So I mean, off the top of my head, I think pre it was somewhere in the range of 40 to 60%. I would have to go back and look at it. Yeah. And then for the exit survey, which again was about 7,000 people who were still around at the end of the class, I think it was around like 60 to 70%.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then how did they perform relative to their high peers? I mean, they finished, obviously.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. So when I looked at including income level as a group level predictor, it was not significantly related to achievement, but which at first you're kind of like, well, that doesn't fit with what we know from some larger international assessments. But think about the students who are coming to this, and especially when we see that a lot of the students from not just the U.S. but high-income English-speaking countries, those are more students who are kind of dabbling in the MOOC, whereas the students who have the wherewithal, who know about this class, and are taking it, or engaging with it in some way, from lower income countries, that's a select group already.
Joe?
I have tons of questions.
Yeah, we all
So
do.
I think, I'll start with the one for Chrystina for Rwanda. And Kepler, the experience that you've had so far, I just wonder if you touched on it on one of your responses on this thing that I want to ask you about. Two things. So when we're looking at sort of this whole phenomenon of MOOCs, right, so several critiques include that there's little, if any, sort of proper instructional pedagogical design that goes into the building of these things. We're all in a grand experimental phase, of course, right now, right? So what is being published now is not very well informed by instructional design, right? And learning pedagogical influence, because they're made by subject matter experts, right? And the other critique is about the cultural tradition-based relevancy of the content that is now being produced, right? So here you are using North American-made online courses through the MOOC platforms, but within this context. And you were saying earlier about, for instance, how there was this need to translate, examples being used in this class of, going for a camping weekend, what does that mean, right? So on and so forth. So I guess you addressed one of the questions I had there, which was how does this really look when an organization like yours really is trying to use it in a way that I think, many of us who are providers of these MOOCs so far really envision that our effort is being deployed, right? And so the other is about the sort of the instructional design, the sort of what is the pedagogical sort of construct of what it is that's out there, especially the ones you pick to use. Earlier you mentioned that one of the challenges on the Rwanda side is that the students lack preparation, right? For a kind of a level of rigor to undertake this level of study. And yet I wonder, the culture of learning, right? You were mentioning also about metacognitions. You're trying to track really what's going on here. It's hard enough, I think, for us here at Penn to be thinking that part through in terms of what is our culture of learning. And when we decide to admit students from, this or this area or this population, given their own educational experiences and backgrounds and levels of preparation, will they succeed in this sort of a culture of education, right? And so I just wonder, how you guys have been grappling with this, and as you think ahead, is it about Kepler really needing to get into the game of localizing the production of your own online content, perhaps in partnership with subject matter expert providers across the world?
Yeah, I think that would be the ideal. So what we do right now is we have the MOOC, and then we have a curriculum design person/team, and they sort of design out the course with the MOOC as a part of it. We don't let the MOOC drive the course, so we use it as a tool within. Like if we could find one that we thought was using super great teaching and learning practices, which there are some, of course, but on the whole, we sort of take it as a tool and then design the course around that with curriculum designers who've been working for quite a while. And for us, it's been then a majority, a lot of K through 12 curriculum designers, and then they work with. We have what we call, quote unquote, the brain trust, and so these are content experts at universities that are willing to help us for free, so that as we might get stuck on a certain piece of content, then we can talk to them about it. But we're using more K through 12 type teaching and learning design, and then trying to talk to the content experts to have them sort of vet it for us and make sure it's at a high enough level, a college level. So that's part of how we're doing the design. I'm lucky enough to have 3 students who we're really proud are starting our first round of internships, and they're working with a gentleman who's doing a startup to try and make some more localized online learning or online even access. So he would like to have people do graphic designs for people. It's a whole nother project, but basically they are going to be creating, the 3 students along with this gentleman, some local content. And so I feel lucky that they're doing that internship so we can sort of see how it goes. Because there's so much to be done and there's so much need, and you need it to be local and you need it to be culturally relevant and you need the students to be prepared and you need to catch them up from it. It's so many things all at once. And then, then we're also talking about a group of people who've dealt with a mass trauma collectively, and are we meeting those emotional needs? I mean, it can just get pulled in so many different directions, and all things that really need to be addressed, and so it can be hard to choose. And so we reckon a lot of times we have to say, well, they are getting a degree from the US, right? And so there are maybe certain cultural expectations we need to know. And then other times you go home and you're like, wow, I feel like I just totally obliterated Rwandan culture and like coded our Americanness all over, so it's a challenge. I think we're just taking it day by day, and we're trying to just use an iterative process. So we kind of just launched and did it. There are other, African Leadership University, which is going to be starting, is doing quite a long period of research before launching. So I'm really interested to see, kind of what's better. Is it better to just jump in and try to improve it and make it better, or is there a certain planning time that's needed? So I think I'm not answering your question, going all over the place, because it is just a tough challenge.
That's the complexity of what's going on for you.
Yeah, so we try to just meet, iterate, try again, track it, see how it goes.
One of the things that goes along with that, and it naturally follows, is we see that the MOOCs are beginning to try to get into the certification and the competency-based specialization now that they're giving through Coursera. How do you take a blended learning program or a competency-based program and give certification for it? Who's accredited again? How do you evaluate it? And you've kind of touched on that, but I know that Leda also was interested in that question.
Yeah, well, we're training teachers again. Teachers are already in service, working in schools. And we are trying to develop competencies in children. So the first thing we need to know is whether the teachers have those competencies, and they have not been trained for that. So we are kind of stuck in that. But one of the first things we started doing was how to evaluate those competencies, because all the assessment in schools in our country, please, are subject memory based. How do you evaluate problem solving or collaboration? And we've been working hard on that. One of the things we've done is been part of an international study that Australia and Finland and Singapore, and there were 5 countries. Costa Rica was the only developing country that was invited to be part of that research team to develop tools, to develop instruments to be able to evaluate, in 3rd grade, how do you evaluate collaboration or critical thinking. And we've been working for the last 2 years in that, and we have a very nice first set of tools that a teacher can use in a classroom setting to evaluate whether those competencies are really being accomplished. The whole graduate process, how do you evolve from 1st grade on. And they are online, and they are very nice pieces, I think. But this is a completely different world. We're just beginning to start developing those tools, and we have to start seeing. We validate those tools, and they seem to work very well in all countries, in the 5 different countries. Very, very little differences in kids. We try them in a country. We try about 500 kids. Validated the tools. So we have, we're moving into that direction, but I think it's a long, long way.
In the U.S., one of the models in the higher ed is, of course, Western Governors University, which has come together that lets students come in and sign up and get credit for competency-based exams. And they're more traditional exams, but it's based on your ability to have learned it in some competency base. It's somewhat of a disconnect because you still take a traditional exam, but we are beginning to explore that. We have time for a couple more questions. Does anybody in the audience have another question?
I think maybe this question is more for Chrystina. Your example of camping in Rwanda sort of gives support to the need to contextualize learning much more, especially in these environments. What I'm curious is how are the people in the community, sort of the students themselves, are they involved in sort of planning of the lessons or contributing to that aspect of it at all?
Our students are not. Our Rwandese teachers are. I think the students are carrying such a heavy load. I think they're capable, but I think we're asking them so much already that I'm a little nervous about pushing them more. But we do have more Rwandese teachers this year than expat teachers, and it'll grow exponentially because we're just going to be hiring teachers from the community. So yeah, they vet a lot of, what's interesting about our model is that teachers watch the MOOCs themselves maybe a couple days before when students are, and the lesson plans are already given to them. And then they will come to us and be like, what are you talking about? This makes no sense. Let's redo this. Let's relook at this. So in terms of creating this quote unquote university in a box or something that other people could use, we sort of have our first version, and then we have our marked up version where we say, okay, this made no sense, this wasn't culturally relevant. And so it's more our teachers having the input in on it, which has sometimes been a challenge within itself because Rwanda is a very hierarchical society, and so some teachers want to come in and do a good job, which they are doing, but so we give you the lesson plan, so the idea of coming back to the lesson plan to me and saying, Chrystina, I think this, and this doesn't work for the students has been sort of an exercise in itself, getting people to feel comfortable doing that, and I need to do more with that.
In saying expat, are you talking about Rwandese who are outside coming back home?
No, so expats, we have one teacher from Jamaica, we have one from, and then the other two are from the US.
Okay.
Yeah, so people from outside of Rwanda.
So last comment, I'd like to see a show of hands, and then you get one more last comment on it. So are we going to see MOOCs and blended learning be, as we sat back and watched in the US and around the world, universities, whether they're public or private or for-profit, are they going to figure out this model so that these models that have come in to play are no longer going to exist? Thoughts? How many of you think we're going to see?
Say that again?
How many of you think are going to see MOOCs in 5 years?
Oh, yeah, sure.
As is? Or
As is.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I raise my hand,
You do.
but not exclusively.
So we appreciate all your comments and questions, and thanks for your participation.